Hi. Before I begin, I want to address the elephant in the room. In case you aren't aware, the 2005 VGM primer is only available in written format. Why? Because the video and audio versions did not render properly, and unfortunately, I deleted all the raw data before I could verify my mistakes. I apologize for this, and have since vowed to be more thorough when rendering any video I make. I might make a video and audio version of the 2005 primer someday, but right now, I'd rather stick to it being a written exclusive. In the meantime, allow me to present the 2006 VGM primer episode. Iconic, forgotten, timeless, innovative. These are the soundtracks that help shape and define what we hear in the video games that we play. I am Nitro, and this is the M-Disc Playlist Video Game Music Primer 2006. Rule of Rose, composed by Yutaka Minobe. Survival horror games had normally been psychological, intense, gory, or any combination of the above. Rarely had there been a survival horror game that set such a tone that would make anyone uncomfortable while playing. That is what Rule of Rose set out to achieve. Composed by Yutaka Minobe, who was primarily known as a Sega composer, with his first game being Skies of Arcadia for the Dreamcast. He learned how to play the piano by himself at the age of 4, and was learning how to compose his own music at the age of 8. He joined Sega in 1996, working as a sound effects designer and arranger for the original Sakura Taisen. When the Dreamcast came around, he was a piano player for pieces in the game Sonic Adventure. He also served as a composer for the 2003 Astro Boy anime and Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. The score for Rule of Rose relies mainly on minimalist string and piano. It wasn't jarring and experimental like a Akira Yamaoka's Silent Hill series, or dramatic and intense like the Resident Evil series. It was just subtle enough to generate a human element to the atmosphere, according to the developers of the game.
Say where is my shame when I call your name? So please don't set me free. I'm as heavy as can be.
The game's vocal piece, A Love Suicide, was performed by the Hiroshi Murayama Trio and the Tokyo Chamber Music Society Orchestra. Rule of Rose was so unsettling, there was a moral panic across Europe over the release of this game and arguments from politicians over how games were rated in Europe, similar to how the Grand Theft Auto games were treated in North America at the time. Rule of Rose's limited release across the world ended up making this game one of the rarest PlayStation 2 games, with second-hand markets pricing the game in the triple digits. Rule of Rose was a very simple approach to the survival horror genre, especially with its score, but sometimes simplicity made things even more terrifying than if any typical horror music had been scored, and that just further amplified how unsettling Rule of Rose was. Final Fantasy XII, composed by Hitoshi Sakamoto, Hayato Matsuo, Masaharu Iwata, and Nobuo Uematsu. From the people who worked on the Ogre series, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Vagrant Story, came the next main entry single-player not a MMO Final Fantasy title. Sakamoto composed the majority of the entire score. Nobuo Uematsu, who had been the primary Final Fantasy composer until scaling back his responsibilities after the 9th game, only composed one piece, the ending theme, Kiss Me Goodbye. Kiss Me Goodbye was composed by Uematsu, with both the lyrics and vocals by Angela Aki. Aki was chosen to be the vocalist as her piano-playing talents reminded Uematsu of Sir Elton John's own piano-playing talents. The song is written and performed in English, and in an interview with IGN, Aki states in regards to writing songs in English, "Whatever I feel in my heart, I let my heart process it and give it to the head, and I put the pencil in my head and rhyming in the head. It's more formatted because I look for words that rhyme to build songs." Masaharu Iwata composed only 2 pieces for the entire score. Despite the minimal contributions, Iwata has been a frequent collaborator of Sakamoto's, collaborating with him since 1988 with the game Revolter, and collaborating with him on the Ogre games, Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, and so many others. Hayato Matsuo composed 7 pieces for the game. He started his career working with Dragon Quest composer Koichi Sugiyama, working on arrangements of Sugiyama's score for the Toei anime Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai. His anime resume would also include popular shows like Magic Knight Rayearth, Hellsing Ultimate, and the 2012 JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. In video games, he had collaborated with Sakamoto and Iwata on games like Ogre Battle and Ogre Battle 64. In 2003, he was the composer for the 13th Kamen Rider title, Kamen Rider Fies. Going into the process of scoring this game, Sakamoto already knew what the ending theme was going to be, so he took that into consideration as he composed. He was inspired by Uematsu and was already a fan of the Final Fantasy series. But for 12, he already knew that he didn't want to try and be as experimental and as eclectic as previous Final Fantasies had been. He already knew that the entire score was going to use a fundamental orchestra form. He also knew that instead of trying to mirror what Uematsu had done for his Final Fantasy scores, he would compose 12 in his own style. He would compose under the impression of how he himself would interpret the Final Fantasy series. Final Fantasy XII was not like other Final Fantasy games. Everything from the way battles were conducted to behind-the-scenes development were nothing like what other Final Fantasy games had experienced. Even so, Final Fantasy XII was renowned for pushing the PlayStation 2 to its limits in the face of the brand new console generation that started with the release of the Xbox 360 1 year prior. Mother 3, composed by Shogo Sakai. The previous Mother games, released in the States as Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings, were both composed by Keiichi Suzuki and Hirokazu Hip Tanaka. For Mother 3, the score was handled by HAL Laboratory composer Shogo Sakai, who Nintendo felt understood the Mother series enough to qualify it for the job. Sakai had been composing for video games since 1987, working with Data East on games like Bad Dudes, Boulder Dash, and Metal Max. In 1996, he joined HAL Laboratory, and his first game would have been the first version of Mother 3, originally intended for release on the Nintendo 64. Development on Mother 3 became too much for the Nintendo 64 alone, so the ill-fated 64-disc drive ended up being required for the game to run. After many delays, Mother 3 was shelved until 2003, when development on Mother 3 resumed as a Game Boy Advance title. The Pigskin Army theme was originally intended to be the game's main theme. However, less than a year before the game's release, Sakai was asked to compose a theme as minimalist as the popular 8 Melodies piece from the first Mother game. That theme would be the Love theme, a theme used to portray the serious nature of this game. And despite being a Mother game, Mother 3 did have some of the most serious moments in the entire Mother trilogy. Sakai was also asked to compose the Love theme using only one finger. Music was also integrated into the game's battle mechanics. Regular attacks can be timed to the beat of the current battle theme to build up your character's combos. The higher your combo, the stronger your attack. Eric Satie's Ginopédie No. 1, a popular piano instrumental, got arranged by Sakai for a plot-developing scene near the end of the game. Unofficially, references to licensed music were integrated throughout the Mother games, but in this instance, Gymnopédie No. 1 officially became the first licensed piece of music to be arranged for the series. Mother 3 continued the trend of having a whimsical score, a serious score, and being able to balance the two together perfectly. And despite the popularity of the series, Mother 3 was only officially released in Japan. Despite this, Mother 3 remains just as beloved outside of Japan as the other Mother games, and Sakai's score manages to encapsulate what Keiichi Suzuki and Hirokazu Hip Tanaka did for their contributions to the series. Okami. Composed by Masami Ueda, Hiroshi Yamaguchi, Rei Kondo, and Akira Kaida. Okami was a game that took director Hideki Kamiya's love for the Legend of Zelda series with Japanese mythology and folklore. Most of the score was split between Masami Ueda and Hiroshi Yamaguchi, with Rei Kondo and Akira Kaida handling smaller portions of the score respectively. Masami Ueda got his music career started with the original Resident Evil series in 1996. Then Ueda joined Clover Studio, a studio founded by select Capcom staff to work on the Beautiful Joe games, and finally Okami as the game's lead composer. Despite the game's setting taking place in traditional Japan, Ueda states in an interview with Parker Chapin that only select pieces from the entire score were in true Japanese styles. He cites the brush god themes and the theme you hear when you save the game. Ueda in the same interview also states that some of his favorite pieces from the game were Playing with Ushikawa, Cursed Shinshu Plains, and Harami Lake. For Hiroshi Yamaguchi, Okami would be the first game he worked on, and Okami would be his only score for Clover Studio before composing for Platinum Games, composing for the Bayonetta series, the Wonderful 101, and the Star Fox games Platinum Games and Nintendo worked on together. Rei Kondo also got his start in video games scoring with Okami. He would also collaborate with Yamaguchi on all the games he worked on as well. Kondo, outside of the Platinum Games collaborations, would be known for his works on Fire Emblem Awakening, Fates, and Three Houses. Akira Kaida had been composing for games almost as long as Masami Ueda has. They both got their starts with Capcom, with Kaida's first score being Night Warriors Darkstalker's Revenge. Kaida would primarily be a Capcom composer in her career, working mostly on Mega Man titles like Mega Man and Bass, Battle Network 1 including its remake Operate Shooting Star, Battle Network 4.5, Battle Network 5, Star Force 3, and Mega Man 10.
散りゆく花びらが街を彩るけど最後の時なのと風が教えてくれた
The game's staff roll theme is Reset, performed by Ayaka Hirahara. The theme combines J-pop with the traditional Japanese-style music incorporated into the Okami score. All re-releases of the game outside of Japan replace Reset with an unreleased version of the Ryoshima Coast theme. Over time, Okami would become one of the most beloved titles from the PlayStation 2, even winning a British Academy Games Award for its score in 2007, in addition to winning an award for artistic achievements. Okami is a homage to Japanese culture and fantasy, blended with modern gameplay mechanics to create one of gaming's most unique and most emotional experiences. LocoRoco, composed by Nobuyuki Shimizu and Kame Adachi. LocoRoco was meant to be a fun, accessible puzzle platformer with pretty visuals and a cute soundtrack. It was a combination of appealing to younger audiences and appealing to international audiences. To help LocoRoco stand out as much as possible, director Tsutomu Kuno created his own language for many of the songs to be performed in. He did this to both help the score stand out and so that foreign players would not be alienated by hearing something performed in a specific language. Kame Adachi has been composing for Sony games since 1998 with Devil Dice. Outside of LocoRoco, he is mostly known for games in the Gran Turismo and God Eater games. His most recent game was the 2017 release of Everybody's Golf. Nobuyuki Shimizu is primarily known for being a composer in the anime industry, working as an arranger on classics like Urusei Yatsura Beautiful Dreamer, Macross Do You Remember Love, City Hunter, Bubblegum Crisis, and Megazone 23. But perhaps having a composer with the experience that Shimizu had helped amplify Kuno's intent to have the music sound lively and indicative of the music he was listening to at the time of development. The music genre he wanted to replicate more so than others were reggae, soul, and R&B. LocoRoco would become one of the most successful titles in the PlayStation Portable library, spanning multiple sequels. Literally every part of the game was meant to stand out and appeal to anyone of any age from any nationality. The art, characters, gameplay, and the music all complemented each other so well that one wouldn't necessarily be enhancing the other. Everything came together seamlessly, with Tsutomu Kuno's vision guiding development of the game. Shin Megami Tensei Persona 3, composed by Shoji Meguro and Yosuke Uda. Persona 3 did not sound like most JRPGs. Persona 3 did not sound like the previous Persona games. Persona 3 stood out for its music that focused heavily on the genres that Meguro had been fond of in his early life. In addition to incorporating those genres, he was also incorporating pop and hip-hop vocals to more than just the opening, ending, or the occasional insert song. Vocal music was just as important to the soundtrack as the instrumentals. 12 vocal pieces are used in the score, all performed by Yumi Kawamura, Tomoko Tomiya, and Lotus Juice. The use of vocals helped set the foundation for what future Persona titles would sound like, and would partially inspire the rhythm games that use music from Personas 3, 4, and 5. Shoji Meguro started his music career working on the first Persona game, Revelations. Revelations is notable for the piece Aria of the Soul, which would become a recurring motif for the entire Persona series as the theme used in each of the game's respective Velvet Rooms. Yosuke Uda only composed a single piece for the game, Adventure Act. From Revelations Persona all the way to the newest version of Persona 5, Persona 5 Royale, Shoji Meguro helped take the Persona series from a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series to a JRPG series that could stand on its own. The music was not something you would normally expect in a JRPG, and that's what helped make Persona 3 stand out at the time. It was a modern setting JRPG that actually used modern setting sounds, in addition to the sounds you would expect to hear in a JRPG. Dead Rising, composed by Hideki Okugawa and Marika Suzuki. Dead Rising is what would happen if you took George Romero's Dawn of the Dead with an attempt to show off how much can be done on the Xbox 360, a system that wasn't even a year old at the time of this game's release. The entire score relied on a combination of dramatic cinematic pieces, calming and pleasant music you would normally hear in a real shopping center, and vocal pieces. Hideki Okugawa had been a Capcom composer since 1994 with the game Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom. He became widely known for his work as the primary composer of the Street Fighter III games. After Street Fighter, but before Dead Rising, he was also known for his work on the Onimusha series. Okugawa was responsible for composing all of the mall music. Marika Suzuki had composed for Capcom since 2004 with the game Under the Skin. Together, Suzuki and Okugawa contributed to the score equally. The vocal pieces were reserved for the bosses in the game known as the Psychopaths, humans driven insane by the zombie outbreak. The genres used for the Psychopaths ranged from metal, punk, and hardcore rap. It did its best to depict the kind of music that was popular in the mid-2000s. Dead Rising tried to make you kill as many zombies as they could fit in one screen, while simultaneously being a campy sandbox romp through an infested mall where you could use practically anything to help you fight. It also had its serious moments that pitted you against the living and non-living. All in all, the music was there to complement every possible experience the game could throw at you. Bully, composed by Sean Lee. Rockstar Games was no stranger to controversy. Their most recent Grand Theft Auto games put them in a lot of hot water, or hot coffee in regards to San Andreas. So releasing a game with the title Bully seemed like they were intentionally asking for trouble. Turns out, Bully was very wholesome when compared to Grand Theft Auto. You are sent to Bulworth Academy by your family, and you must abide by all the school's rules and do your schoolwork while simultaneously dealing with the Academy's different cliques, under the guise and manipulation of sociopath Gary. It was more mischievous than violent. Sean Lee, whose only game score was this one, had been a professional musician since 1988 with his work with the Dust Brothers and Jeff Buckley. He had released albums in France, Japan, and the United States. His work has appeared in the films Ocean's 13, The Breakup, and his work has appeared in numerous popular TV shows like CSI Miami, Lost, and HBO's Eastbound and Down. In an interview with Il Tergiversatore, Lee states that the music touched on the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and beyond. It was obviously influenced by film soundtracks and also various pop musical styles. Each musical cue had its own unique perimeters, and the trick was to pull together all these different styles of music, making them feel cohesive. Bully was a different kind of sandbox game for Rockstar, but it still proved to be a success nonetheless, with ports on the Xbox 360, the Nintendo Wii, and as a PlayStation 2 classic on the PlayStation 4. The pop music and film score feel that Sean Lee used for the Bully score helped enhance the story of an adolescent teen in a prosperous school dealing with various cliques along the way. The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, composed by Toru Minegishi and Asuka Ota. Twilight Princess was the Zelda game meant to appeal to North American audiences out of concern that a second game in the style of Wind Waker wouldn't be as appealing. This would also be the first Zelda game where Toru Minegishi would serve as the primary composer, a role that Koji Kondo had all the way up to the release of Wind Waker. Toru Minegishi, who joined the Zelda franchise with Majora's Mask, would slowly transition into the role as one of the primary composers of the Zelda series with this game. Minegishi had always been a fan of Kondo's and his music in the Zelda franchise, using those as inspirations of his own career. In Twilight Princess, he was mainly responsible for the field and dungeon pieces. Asuka Ota helped compose much of the event music as well as the battle themes. Also inspired by Koji Kondo, she joined Nintendo as a composer with her first Zelda title being Four Swords Adventures. Arrangements of Koji Kondo's music, like in previous Zelda titles, can be heard in Twilight Princess. But this game does more than just provide new arrangements of Kondo's pieces. It uses them in ways they had never been used before, like in the game's final dungeon, where you are forced to go through Hyrule Castle to get to Ganondorf. The Hyrule Castle theme, originally composed for A Link to the Past, is heard, but the more you progress through the castle, the more you start to hear Ganon's theme, which was also originally composed for A Link to the Past. Once you reach the end of the castle, Ganon's theme completely takes over the Hyrule Castle theme. Twilight Princess marked a new beginning for Zelda music going forward. No longer was Koji Kondo the primary force behind the Zelda franchise's music. Kondo's influence would continue to be heard throughout future Zelda titles, but new composers would step up with each new main entry in the Zelda franchise. And now, I would like to do something different. Instead of covering a game, I want to cover the music heard in the background of the various Wii menus. When the Nintendo Wii was released, it was destined to be one of the hottest selling consoles on the market at the time. But what helped make the Nintendo Wii stand out was not the games or the motion controls, but the music you heard in the game's main menu. The main menu itself and its many different channels, Wii Shop, Me, Photo, News, Weather, and the Everybody Votes channel each had different, unique, and memorable music. Sources indicate that longtime Nintendo composer Kazumi Totaka was the mastermind behind the music you would hear in these Wii menus. Kazumi Totaka has been one of Nintendo's in-house composers since 1992 with the games X, Mario Paint, Keiru no Tame ni Kane wa Naru, and Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins. He is also known for sneaking in his own 19-note piece as an Easter egg in every game he has composed music for, known as Totaka's Song. When he transferred to analysis and development, his role as a composer decreased somewhat, but he would still find occasion to compose for games, including the role as one of Animal Crossing's primary composers. Even after the Wii ended its online services in 2017, the music from the Wii channels remained popular to this day. Largely through memes, the Wii music, mainly the Mii channel theme, remain a prevalent part of video game music society. The Wii menu music also appear as arrangements in the Smash Bros. Series, showing that Nintendo also considers the music of the Wii menus an important part of their music library. The Nintendo Wii was one of Nintendo's most iconic consoles. The Wii's mark on video game history can be heard the instant you turn it on, and before you even play any game you insert into the system.